And now we shall begin. Are you ready?
I'm all good. I'm in the zone.
In the zone.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, and this is my beginning. Welcome to Hypnosis In Action. My name is Stephen Anderson. I am the Outback hypnotist, and today I have with me Heather Gibson.
Hello,
Heather.
I'm so excited to be here with you on this journey.
Thank you so much. Now, Heather, how could I put this? This is probably totally and completely 100% inappropriate in saying, but you're a tiny lady.
I am tiny.
Okay, but you wear the biggest ring. Is there a story to that ring?
Oh, I just love having simple things and simplicity of jewellery. But I never wore rings probably 5 years ago, and now this is just a simple form of self-expression.
Yeah.
And they just speak to me. I just love them. I change my rings fairly often, but they are big rings, and they're just I think for me it's self-expression and living in my values, and this is really part of my authenticity, because you know what, as human beings, I've learned in my own journey to Limitless that we're all creative, and for a very long time I suppressed my creativity in my life and believed in other realities of logic and predictability. And now, as I live a life of alignment, this is part of my creative self, you know, that I want to give and bring to the world in everything that I do.
So cool.
Yeah, it is, and I think that it's part of a massive journey of change for me. So I suppose that's a really interesting point that you've picked up on there. That yes, probably if you knew me 5 years ago when I was in my corporate wear, I did not in any way, shape or form embrace much jewellery at all, let alone these big rings that maybe you can see here. And you know, I looked very different in all of those things, but as I've become more and more in tune with my inner self, I guess I realised how creative I am, and that's really what I would love for everybody else on their journey to becoming more and more limitless.
Perfect. Now we for a second are going to put a hold to this, because for some strange reason, even though I checked this thing this morning, it seems to be totally full, and that's just lost us a camera, and it's a brand new one, and that's making life really difficult for us, but we'll be able to cut it out later.
Oh, good.
If I can work out how to use it. As I said, it's a new one that I've just bought, because by that one there, I've pretty much destroyed files, and sorry about this.
I find it fascinating. I'm always learning when it comes to this. You're my second big podcast, so.
You see, it's really playing with me, isn't it? I'm trying to say just delete that away, because I've actually got an hour of files. And I reckon I should be able to.
Just get a little video of me talking to you as well, if that's okay.
Oh, cool. That'll give us fourth. We might even use yours.
That's fine. I love the ceiling here. When I did my last podcast, I filmed and clipped, and I did breakups of it.
Isn't that ridiculous?
We can use mine if you need to, because I've got lots of storage, and
I'm starting to think we might have to do that.
that's okay. And I can, I can Dropbox it to you, or...
So there's no delete sign there, is there?
Maybe more?
Yeah, more. It says settings.
No, there isn't a delete sign.
Okay.
I don't use that.
Uh-huh. No, actually. Hold on to that one. Now, what's that?
Okay.
And now we've got to get back into the swing of things.
That's all good. We're good at...
I reckon we can do that.
We're good at... Don't worry if my phone falls off, I'll just keep my finger
Yeah,
on. I need a little bit of footage just for Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. And we're up and running.
Yay!
Okay. So, with that little bit of technical difficulty
Slight
now
technical
in the
difficulty.
background, hopefully it's in the background as I check the other cameras to make sure they're still recording. 5 years ago you were corporate.
Yes. Oh,
And
yes.
something must have happened.
Yes, and that's really the start of my journey. I mean, like all the people I speak to all the time, everybody's got their complex lives and their stories to tell. And I'll bring you into the starting point that I wanted to probably share with you first and foremost, which is that I had a high-flying career in London. I was an editor, and I love being an editor. It's such an amazing gift of creativity with words, and I love words. I love everything to do with language. But I'd had a baby, a beautiful son called Max, and I wanted to come back to my home country of Australia, which I did with my family, as it was comprised of that time. And very shortly after that,
Interesting how fluid family is nowadays.
it is, and it was I was married at that time. I'm not married now, but we relocated, so that's a pretty big change in and of itself. My mother had died of cancer a few years prior to that, and I'd had a baby. As I said, we'd sold our beautiful 2-bedroom flat in London with no financial gain, really one of the victims of the GFC. And then I actually made the life-changing decision to have a hysterectomy and a double mastectomy. So my mother had died of ovarian cancer, so I had the option I was diagnosed with the BRCA1 gene, and I decided to have these surgeries. And, I kind of did that just really for my son, because I felt that although I'd had only one child, I had been diagnosed with another sight-threatening eye condition, and it gave me a wake-up call, and I realised I wanted to be there for him. So I chose to have these 2 huge surgeries, but believe me, by the time I was in hospital having them, it really wasn't that big a decision, and they were great outcomes for me. And then as a result of that, I began to firstly suffer with my health, because those surgeries made me physically really, really into a very dark place. And then slowly...
Can you just step back a second and say that again, but say it in a different way?
Well, the surgeries, they took a huge physical toll, and it sounds simple, but I was someone, firstly, who did not have cancer, having surgeries to prevent getting cancer, so I'd been through a whole treatment of in-hospital recovery, build-up prepping with ladies that didn't have cancer, and those ladies were young, old, with children, with babies, still trying to breastfeed, all sorts of different things, and it taught me a lot. And then when I came in at home to recover, I fell into a very, very difficult mental place, where a lot of issues really became to be thrown up in my life. And
were you still in England at this time?
No, I was living with my dad in Brizzy, and he and so was my then husband. And what that did does firstly propel me to really start to think about my own health in a really prioritised way. And I think that, as a parent, particularly when you become a mother, you do sort of do a fair bit of self-sacrifice for your children, and that's part of the journey. But what happened in these moments of my life in recovering from, double mastectomy is a huge physical piece of surgery, let alone the recovery. And I had breast implants and so forth as well, so there was 2 surgeries and all sorts of different issues. And it really began to force me to, stop being a bit of a martyr, actually, and stop the self-sacrifice for a second and really focus in on me as a human being. And in a sense, that was very hard to do because it made me realise that my relationship was no longer viable, and that was something that was, ultimately something that was going to end actually as a result of this. But it also made me realise, a whole series of things about my belief system.
Going to end as a result of this.
Sorry?
Going to end as a result of this.
Well, partly, yes. It made me realise that my relationship, which had been very challenging for many years, was in a place where it was, unfortunately not able to be recovered from, and I didn't want to be in it anymore, and neither did that time did my ex-husband. So we then began the journey of separation, which on top of those 2 surgeries, I would say even beyond the surgeries, the breakdown of a long-term relationship, whether you're married, whether you're in a same-sex relationship, whether you're not married, that's probably the hardest thing I've had to do in my life. And it's not because that relationship, by the time it was ended, we had definitely tried everything. There was no doubt about it.
Now, can I stop you there just for a sec? And I just want to confirm that I heard you correctly. Are you saying that the breakdown of a marital relationship was more painful to you than 2 life-altering operations?
In hindsight, yes, absolutely, because of probably some of the emotions, really, and the complexity of the emotions that I began to realise I had sort of endured as it was a 16-year relationship. And yes, I'm saying that my body healed. That they were dark times post-surgery because you can't physically exercise. You can't even, at some certain moments you couldn't even really walk down the street, and that's quite a big shock when you've otherwise been healthy up until that point. And in saying that, those surgeries after their recovery period of in immediate terms of say 6 to 8 weeks in each stint, your body does heal. And bear in mind that you're still healing to get back levels of fitness and wellness. But what it then propelled me to do was really wake up and smell the coffee, and began to address what in my life was really some of the real issues holding me back. And yes, then that became the need to end my relationship, and that became really the hardest battle I fought. And I walked out of that relationship more or less, and at that moment I fell into a mental health breakdown.
So can we stop there?
Yeah.
Let's go right back to long before that, long before these trials and these tribulations. You told me that both of your parents were public servants.
Yes.
And as public servants, it surprised me that you said that they lifted you so much to give you the ability to make so many of your own choices.
Yes.
Because stereotypically, speaking as a public servant, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They are public servants tend to be very, very tunnel vision. They're going down a line, and there's no deviating from that line, and you do what's expected of you and what everyone has expected of you forever. And I'm just interested, what was different about your parents to every other public servant that I've ever met in my entire life?
That's an awesome question, and I think it is just a testament to those 2 people and their impact on my life. I think my dad was really, he was the 30-year public servant that really started when he was very young. He began as a social worker, and then he became more of a management public servant in the sort of white-collar field. But my dad was probably one of the biggest influences of, forge your own path. And I think it's because in his own life, he was born in 1947, in his own life he had to make some fairly big choices because he had those expectations put on him. And that was just really the era of his upbringing, And my father, prior to becoming a public servant, had been in the seminary. He was studying to be a priest, and he really did that because he was sort of had to, and he ultimately Irish Catholic, as the eldest child of 5 children, and sort of traditions and whatnot. And he came from a very, we come from a fairly well-respected family in Ipswich, and all these sorts of different things. And he'd had that expectation put on him, so he did the seminary. He left, he travelled, he came back, he got married, he became a public servant. But in his own value system, I think he held on to something different through his own children. And then my mother was the life and soul of the relationship in terms of charisma, creativity. She was a bit quirky, a bit different, was a teacher, very, very well-respected teacher, and all the kids that she taught in primary school loved her. And she was adamant that she was going to create wealth and abundance and love and creative lives for her kids, and always would just say to me, you do what you want to do. You're a beautiful person. That's what we want for you. And in a sense, gave me a limitless foundation for my life. And that was hugely life-changing. So my parents just did that, and I didn't really know any different.
So
but in hindsight,
how many children did she have to create this wealth and abundance for?
She had 3. So I'm the eldest of 3. I have 2 brothers, so I'm the only girl. And in my family, I was the first grandchild on both sides of the family. I was a girl. It was 1975, so everybody listening, I'm 43, I'll be 44 this year. And I was kind of a very special addition to the family for all those reasons, as all my siblings and my cousins were and are. But, in 1975, firstborn child, pretty special. And then it happens that on my mother's side of the family, myself and my brothers were the only grandchildren, and my mum had a brother and a sister who ultimately did not have any children. So I was always very special. I was always told I was special. And fortunately too, what I would add there is I have some very vivid memories when I was 15 years old. So 15, guys and girls, you're a teenager. There's, you got some stuff going on there. And even at school, I went to St Benedict's in Wilston, sadly a school that no longer sort of exists in that form. But I can remember one of my big teachers there telling me, Heather, you can do whatever you want. I was always I always had that said to me, you can do whatever you want. You can be a pilot if you want to. You can go and be a doctor if you want to. And, these were some of the things that I grew up with. But certainly, familiarly, family, I had an amazing foundation. My parents gave me brilliant education. And I went and studied at university and so forth.
If I can say, that tends to be one of the triggers to underperforming as opposed to overperforming. It sounds to me like you had an awful lot of expectations.
I did.
And those expectations tend to be followed by a massive fear of failure, and therefore you don't do anything.
Well, and you know what? I always struggled with a fear of failure, and I always had huge expectations put on me. And in fact, a little anecdote there is I was a musical kid. I was in the choir. I learned to play piano. I learned the violin. I sang, and I actually toured with my high school choir. Possibly once or twice, I can't remember now. But I was very musical, and I could have gone and studied music. There's a place in Brisbane called the Conservatorium of Music, and I had a very supportive music teacher who would have helped me to probably even be able to think about getting in there. Whether I was good enough, I don't know. But in the end, that's when my parents were very much more there to push me, and I ultimately studied business and I majored in HR, industrial relations, and that's what they wanted. I don't think music would ever have been seen as the right thing. Now, I don't regret that, but it ultimately, that's where I started the suppression of creativity, was that music would have allowed the creative self to come.
Do you still pick up an instrument?
Unfortunately, no, and I don't really sing. And I love music, and my brother is a very very diligent, dedicated, and artsy musician based in Melbourne, who has studied at the Victorian College of Art. So he sort of very much lived and lined in that realm to his creativity. But I certainly was the girl. Like, I actually was accepted to become a lawyer. I was going to be a lawyer, and thank God I didn't. Not because I don't love lawyers, and I have many great lawyer friends, and I would have been a good one. But that would have been more detrimental to my own journey of Limitless. And when I ultimately had a breakdown, I was definitely told on the one of the as humans, we're all trying to get over some limiting beliefs of our childhood, and our parents, you know what, my friends, they mean well, and I love my mum and my dad and my family and all these sorts of things, but they're some of the things that we get brought up believing are the things we attach huge emotions to that are hard to overcome in our adult life. And I was certainly not only a kid that had a lot of expectations put on her, but I was always told I was selfish, and that then became
told by who?
By my parents, and it was done, as parents do. They'll just say things, you're very selfish, or and I probably wasn't always considerate of my brothers and all those sorts of things, and kids are kids. But that actually became one of the really hard limiting beliefs for me to overcome in this stage of my life, where I'm in a position where I'm having to really own the space I'm in and come to talk to you and be in these moments and really talk about that level of elevation where it's like, I've chosen myself, and I'm not selfish to do so, and in fact I'm able to give more love and compassion and kindness to my son and to the people around me because of that. So being told those things, yes, I had a massive fear of failure. I did rebel. I had a very big rebellious period. I have had a huge rebellious period of my life.
Talk about that.
Firstly, at school I can remember I began to start dressing very differently. I wanted to be a swampy, if we can remember those days, and really just began to start rebelling when I was about 15. And that sort of was a journey probably that, began in terms of, I was a smoker at school, and I was probably getting up to things I shouldn't do, and I was very much someone that developed a belief. I'm someone that, in my mindset, and I think this is one of the things that is different slightly about me, is that I take things out to a real nth degree, was that I ended up, I suppose, in that rebellious period with the belief that, you had to try things to experience them to be able to say yay or nay. And
Has
that
belief changed?
No, but what it did do, firstly, I think that was a huge reason that I moved to London when I was 23, 24, because I knew I would escape and be quite free, which I was. And then when I arrived in London in 1998, and for everyone that was there, these were good times, and I became, hardcore clubber, raver, really going out and enjoying those experiences, and also really starting to just be relaxed about where I wanted to go in my life. And I certainly was not someone that wanted to get married and have children or anything like that. And,
as a teenager, you wanted to be a musician.
Yeah.
You left school and were directed into the business area. So at 22 or 23, you just finished uni?
Well, that was my other story. I actually went to uni straight from school, and I therefore graduated when I was all of, 20. And I had been working at KFC, and I got a job in their head office whilst I was at uni. So I was able to transition straight to an amazing job with working with an amazing HR director who really gave me the foundations for that element of my career. And it was actually when I was sort of just in about the second year of being the HR officer for Collins Foods International that I chose to go overseas. So I was about 2 years out of uni when I went to London. And so still, but as I always say, I was very young, very naive, lacking in life experience, and I knew that I needed to do something very, very different with my life to get the life experience. I knew that I was intelligent, that I had been educated well, but what I wanted was real life, raw experience.
Okay.
And that's what London gave me.
Can we talk about that for a sec? You knew that you were intelligent. The era that you grew up in the graduating high school in the 90s,
Yes.
Was still an area, was still a time where females were not pushed to do academic type work.
No.
And our universities at the time, I think, probably had 15% or 20% women, as opposed to now 50-50, or actually I think more.
Yeah.
And how did you find that feeling? Now, I don't know Mitchelton. Was it an all-girls school?
Mount Maria, it was a co-ed. Well, I went to Mount Maria in grade 11 and 12. That was co-ed. That was awesome. And I actually feel that I had my first 3 years of high school at St Benedict's, which was all girls, and then transitioned to co-ed. And I actually think that was one of the best choices of my secondary education. I firmly believed that having co-ed in those final 2 years, that did give a base for really the next stage of life, which for me was going to uni. How I found it was, I think this is in hindsight why, because I was smart, and I actually was the school captain of St Benedict's when I was in grade 10, and then in grade 11 and 12, at least in grade 12, I think I was on, they called it the SRC, the Student Representative Committee, and I always was positioned in leadership roles, and even my mum would say, you're a natural leader, Heather, and I love leadership, and I've done a lot in it, but I was very much always the leader, and I think that's why I had teachers always saying to me, you can do what you want. But funnily enough, when I was in grade 12, as much as I love language and literature, in grade 12 you start to get exposed, in my case, to some of the politics of secondary education, and my grades in English, although they were at the very high level of AA+, they actually got downgraded a bit when I actually left school. And I think for me that was a huge, it was a bit of a blow.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't do well in those subjects and I'm not good at those things, but within that system I felt that I'd been compromised a bit in hindsight by the teachers and the teaching that I'd had, and it was probably no one's fault, but it's certainly that fear of failure thing and sort of not being perfect came to bear there, which is why when I became an editor I was ready to grab that moment. But then when I went to university, I was not only really told to go to uni, really, I didn't have a lot of choice. It was particularly pushing. I chose to do human resource management. Now at that time, human resource management was very much, what is that? It was very much a new degree at QUT. And look, there are a lot of women doing that. What I would say was that I was amongst, in my years of study, I was amongst, because of making that choice actually, for most of the time amongst older people. So I was like 18 at uni, and I was going to uni with 26 to 30-year-olds. Now that's a huge age difference. And whilst I was able to intellectually go with that, I think my feeling of that time was I loved my uni, I loved getting the degree, I was set up because I had a job with Collins Foods, but again, it wasn't giving me real, what I think now in hindsight was just emotional development and emotional security and validation of who I was. And so it was awesome, and I don't begrudge any of it, and it set me up well. But times have changed now, and I think probably what even I want for my son and in his education is more that he can choose his own path. And perhaps uni is awesome, but it's not for everybody. You don't need to go to uni to be successful in life, and I'd rather see people really pursue dreams and do whatever the choices are there to get there. And one of the big elements for me would be now actually fitness, and training and educating myself in a realm of fitness so that I can become professional at that. But that may or may not happen, and I trust that if it's due to happen, it will. But
so you left uni, you went into HR.
Yeah.
You spent some time in HR and then found yourself in publication. as an editor?
Yeah, after about, I did HR for about 10-15 years.
Oh.
And then I changed careers. So when I got to London, I actually spent years in HR again and became an HR director before I was 30. So I was very successful in that particular profession, and had the corporate car, was getting bonuses and, you know, flying around and living a bit of a high-flying career then. But as part of my final role as the HR director for Jigsaw Day Nurseries, that company was sold, and I got a redundancy package from that business, and then met through, by virtue of chance, the man that was to become the great mentor of my life, a man called Chris Shepherdson, and he offered me a job with him, and he was a hugely successful entrepreneur.
Can I stop you right there and take us totally off track?
Yeah.
The man who was the greatest mentor of your life.
Yeah.
I'm noticing, very interestingly, that females in business right now tend to be doing the chicks in business thing.
Yeah.
And where males are basically outcast.
Yeah.
And I've seen that an awful lot. And I just find it interesting that you, as a successful person, talk of this male as your great mentor. Do you think that the women today doing the things they're doing in excluding men from their business are restricting their opportunities?
Well, yes, I do. And firstly, what I would say is, you know, I've done my fair share of networking and those sorts of things, but I don't advocate for women-only networking and or personal growth and development. And in my work as a mental health advocate, I firmly support males and mental health, because actually, by virtue of working with Chris, who exposed me to CEOs and MDs, now by virtue of that, they were mostly men, that's just the way it was in those times, I'm a man's coach, you know, and I get men. And you know what Chris did to me, what I would say is, you know, guys have got the ability to be brutal with you, and as part of your career development, you're going to need to be pulled down a notch or two and put back together again. And whilst for me working with Chris, there was some pain points, without doubt, that is what he did. And here I am now in a stage of my life of amazingness, which I put down a lot to him, just being willing to sit me down and say, whoa, chick, girl. He didn't say it like that, but he'd say, he called me Heather. You know, you need to think about this. You're actually better in this format. You're not good in this format. And he was the man that would say to me, you know what? This girl, she's better performing when she's got 48,000 things in the air. Don't let Heather get bored. You know, let's give her everything she wants and needs, which was, you know, huge realms of different things. Now that, my friends, that's a huge gift. He never boxed me in, and, you know, just for everyone listening to this, just think about that. So then, yes, to answer your question, firstly, it's not right to underplay the needs of men and men in leadership roles, particularly in the helicopter views. So our CEOs, our business owners, our entrepreneurs, our founders who are men. And it's also, I don't believe it's helpful to push, you know, female-only agendas. The actual need is to look at you, and you look at me, and for everybody listening to look at the people in our lives and see the people for who they really are. And that's what Chris gave to me. Not only that he did that to me, but that I now see that in you, and I see that in everybody I meet, is that it doesn't matter your story. It doesn't matter if you have suffered and dealt with shame, as I have, okay, and we all have. It doesn't matter if you failed significantly, as I have, you know, and I know you have, but I'm just sharing with you that I have done and been all those things. The greatest gift you've got is to see people for who we really are. That's true diversity. That's what I aspire to. And that's really what he gave to me. So I wouldn't be limiting myself with chicks in business or whatever it is. I don't buy into that. I think that it's good that we have more diversity in our workforce. I think that certainly I know I'm very intuitive, and I want to give that to my male colleagues and peers that I coach, that I mentor, and I think that they want that too, you know, and guys are asking similar questions to girls, and they have mental health issues just as much as girls do. And you know what? With my fitness, with my health, with my wellness, I have a lot of men in my tribe, and I think it's because I love men, and what I mean by that is I get that they're coming from complex places. And Chris, in terms of answering your question, you know, he was a complex character, as was I, and we kind of learnt a lot from each other, I would say, in hindsight. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about values, a lot about how to live through values. Taught me a lot about how hard it could be to be at the top of business, and also he taught me just what I needed to do to be really brutal with myself, which is what you've sort of got to do if you want to elevate and increase performance in your life.
So the reason for this little show I do is all about me. I love talking to people who are interesting and exciting. You actually fit that category.
Thank you, Stephen.
And I have to say, we have just had a totally and completely different conversation to what I thought we were going to have. Because you do portray yourself as a fitness girl.
Yes.
And we haven't spoke about it at all.
And I am fit.
and that's fun. The second or the primary reason about me doing this is so that I can investigate and understand what it is that's going on inside your mind, or the mind of the person that's sitting there beside me. Because I firmly believe, and though people don't like the word, that we hypnotize ourselves every day, and most of us do it in the wrong way. Most of us say things to ourselves subconsciously or consciously, where our subconscious is listening, that are not good. They're not good things at all. We have that little person on our shoulder speaking bad words to us all of the time.
We do, and that's a huge issue for all of us.
Yeah, and that is a huge issue. So my aim is to figure out what it is you are saying to yourself that is hypnotising yourself every day.
Absolutely.
What do you think that is?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to try and reach into that. I want you to give it to me.
Well, and as I preface this, and I'll preface it just by saying to everyone listening, and even to yourself, albeit, but I don't necessarily think you would do this, is really ask yourself, listeners, you know, what are you saying to cope? And what are you saying to self-sabotage in your life at the moment? That's the starting point for mindset transformation. Now, what I say to myself in my mind every single day of my life, and I'll coach myself in the moment, taking times out, is think elevation. That's the big one. Step into the light, stay into the light. So that's so that I keep my mindset to choose positive and I don't step into self-sabotage. That's a huge issue. And I always say this, and people that come and listen to my talks, it's one of the first things I'll say, your aspiration is elevation and we want to get you there. And then I will always say to myself, in this moment, Heather, am I aligned to my values here and now, being integrity and authenticity? Am I aligned to my values? Have I just acted in that situation within my values? Are they intact? And I say that 5, 10, 20, 15 times a day, as often as needed to continually elevate. And really, I'm saying to myself in maybe slightly more challenging circumstances is that now I'm going to put my mental health first. I will now choose positive and make the choice. And then occasionally I'll go into my mantras. First and foremost, trust is the currency of change. Transparency is essential. I'll say that over and over again. I'll say the problem is you don't know what the problem is. And what I'm trying to do is recalibrate to objectivity, to diversity, to all those things.
You don't know what the problem is.
Because, you can go into a situation where, you may be wanting to get an outcome, and the temptation can sometimes be to jump in or to dive in or to just do something. But what I aspire to always do is to tune into my intuition. And to do that, I'll say, the problem is you don't know what the problem is. So let's just step back. Let's just stop for a minute. Okay, let's just go out and realign. Are my values intact? Think elevation. What can I be doing in this moment to actually elevate it? And honestly, the more I say that, the more I find that I'm giving so much to the communication and the engagement of my world, and it's really refining just my ability to trust my intuition all the time.
So you are taking the positive direction you're planning to head, and you're forcing it down the throat of your subconscious mind, so that it's the only thing you can think of.
I'm and in fact we've just spoken about it today, but I interrupt the intuitive tendency to self-sabotage and to cope. So prior to this, I'd say things to myself like, don't think, just do. You're not good enough. This is shit. Why put yourself first, for example? And I think we can all relate to this. I speak to a lot of people that relate to this. So these are the elevations that I'll do all the time to interrupt that process, that cognitive process. And you know, when I last had a very devastating, let's say, life moment where normally I'd fall back into darkness in these kind of moments, my mind just elevated straight away. Like I didn't even have to think about it. The more you can practice those things of self-hypnosis, the more your mind eventually works it out for you, and you can literally train your brain to change the game. So you can choose positive. Now, I'm not saying that I don't deal with complex emotions, but what I'm saying is I know how to get myself through it, you know.
I'm sitting here, my mouth's open, I don't know what to say. You're sensational.
No, I think you are too.
You really are. Do you have, the last question or second last question, do you have standard everyday rituals that you follow to ensure that you stay on that path?
Yes, I do. And the first one is gratitude with coffee. So when we think about meditation, this isn't you know, meditation is not an moment. And this, you ask me about men, a lot of men meditate. Meditation for me is, I'm a coffee lover, I love coffee, and I have my coffee every day, practicing gratitude as soon as I get out of bed. 3 things, you don't have to say it out loud, but you're thinking of it. And every time you get anxious in a day, I constantly switch to elevation. It's a really quick meditation. You can do it at your desk, you can do it in the car, whatever it might be. Keep doing that, because that will help you to stay elevated. I am very physically fit. We haven't spoken about it, but there is no doubt that in your top 3 of everything, to get mentally healthy and well, to create mindset transformation, you're thinking about your fitness. So fitness and food, consistency is key for both of those things, and you'll keep yourself truthful and honest to who you are by investing in those things. You can do it as much as you like in a day. It actually doesn't have to take too long, but both those things are important. So I keep healthy, I eat well, I make choices around when and how I consume alcohol, but I eat chocolate every day. I love chocolate. And it's dark chocolate and all the rest of it, but I love it. And I keep consistency in those routines. And then I make sure that I seek light every day, and I make sure I get into light and light space.
Seek light as in sunlight?
Yep, sunlight or some form of light. And I take walks and low impact exercise in green space. Now you can do it by ocean, you can do it by water. Not barefoot because of where it is. I try to get to water as often as I can. So I have vistas that I know I can run to in my immediate surroundings where I live in North Brisbane, and I go there as often as I can. And you know, I can take my son with me if he's with me. I have a week on, week off custody arrangement with my ex-husband, and I do those things every day. And I make sure I train in the mornings, personally speaking, just so that I can get to real high level of elevation. And that's because in my world I'm probably running about 4 businesses, and I've got a lot of different exciting things happening, so I need to keep elevated. But honestly, keep yourself consistent with fitness, food, get into gratitude, do it as often as you can. I align and I realign as often as I need to a day. You know, when people have recovered from depression, I say that we are always seeking good light, and you need to focus on light in your life.
Always seeking good light. And on that note, we have run out of time.
Yes, but thank you so much.
What we'll do is we'll finish off by you looking at that camera and telling everyone who you are, how to get in touch with you, and telling the people who you want to get in touch with you, because I figure there's only a small number of people that you want.
My name is Heather Gibson, and I am the founder of Life Limitless. I'm a mental health and wellness coach, and I have developed brain training techniques for you to increase the power of performance through a holistic approach to health and wellness, being fitness, spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. You can get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me through Heather at livelifelimittless.com.au. You can come and follow me on Facebook, on Instagram at Live Life Limitless Group, or at Heather Gibson too. And if you are a founder, a business owner, a leader, an entrepreneur in particular, I'm here to help you. I am brilliant working with people with the helicopter view, who need help resolving overwhelm and complexity, who want to elevate to the next level of performance and train their brain in mindset transformation techniques. Equally, if you are similarly on a journey in terms of wanting to bring your dream to life and create a new business, you can get in touch with me on those channels too. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Stephen.
It was great fun.
Great experience, and you're all limitless here and now. So choose positive, make the choice to put mental health number one.
Perfect. That's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you so much.